It's always been something that like I've loved to do. I kind of found myself like in my element.
It was just an amazing experience for me because Kara and I were just like, yes, this is what we want.
My name is Hanfi Olsen. I am a sophomore here at the Emerging Media Arts program.
My name is Peyton Bergkamp. I am a second year student in the Emerging Media Arts program here at the University of Nebraska.
I'm Megan Kanger. I'm a sophomore in Emerging Media Arts.
Cinema Production 1 is for the students who are in the cinematic arts emphasis. And it's pretty much just a class where we get the group. It's like one group for the entire semester. So we all get to make 3 different short films throughout the semester. And we each get to like change off the roles.
We're kind of learning different steps of what it takes to make a movie.
For instance, on my first project with my group, I was the one editing the film, and then this one I took on the directing role, and then next film I'll take on the director of photography role.
It's just a way to help us get started with our skills, learn to work with each other.
During our first presentation and where they were presenting the project, they were like, yeah, you can do a tableau. And I was like, what? I'd never even heard of what that was. I knew what static camera was, where you just placed it. And I immediately like had the ideas of the collar. It's all about like back in the 1950s when there were types of gentleman collars where they would try to woo women. I obviously wrote the script because I was my creative idea, which is always interesting. And then the first problem came up to me to go, how do I write a script with no dialogue? So I just started breaking down every scene, exactly how I wanted each scene to look. And it ended up being our roadmap. And I had never thought of a script necessarily as a roadmap. I purely think that it's dialogue. So that was like the first time I ever had an interaction with a script like that. But obviously the next problem came up. We were having a film with 1 girl and 9 boys. How do you get 9 boys to willingly act and jokingly be rejected in your film? Luckily for me, I did have a nice connection with one of the fraternities here, and then I was able to ask them if they would be willing to be in my film. So the night before, I had been a little stressed out because I hadn't gotten all the boys' responses yet on their clothes. I had known they were all doing it, but I hadn't got the responses. So I woke up at 8 in the morning and I texted them all. I put them all in a group meet and I texted them all this fun thing. So I said their times, and I said what they were wearing. I said, please arrive 15 minutes early. I said their arrival time, their next time. And then I'm just shoving my stuff into bags, like all my stuff that I needed for on set. And I probably looked like a crazy person walking across cameras. I had like a Vera Bradley duffel bag full of like makeup, hairspray, props, because we were a very prop-based film. And I had my tripod, my camera, I had snacks, a water bucket, and I like was just walking my happy butt to set, and it was so fun. So we get onto set. And I am standing there and I'm getting the camera all set up, and I'm like, camera's not moving from this spot. Perfect. And I had it on to like set everything. And I walk away from the camera and I go over to the craft table, and like, this is 20 minutes before we're supposed to shoot. Not realizing I'm letting the camera sit there on the whole time. And I just was like, oh my gosh. Like I come back over and I'm like, oh, well we still have 3% like battery, but like we are gonna be there for about 6 hours. So like it was just like, not gonna be possible. And so then I just kind of forgot about it, honestly, which is very bad about me. And we just started going, started filming, and then all of a sudden I just got this like nice little blinking red light, and it was like, camera's dying, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I turned it off, and I just used that time to give Ellie the battery, and she walked on over to the Carson Center, and we actually had 2 batteries that we just were swapping back and forth. Go charge this battery, well this one's about to die. We'll use this one, and then we'll swap them, and we'll swap them. So we actually ended up swapping the battery over 3 times because they got us about halfway charged before each of them. It was just interesting because then I was almost able to use that time to do kind of the harder talks with the actors. Like we had some scenes where I couldn't film it every take. I couldn't film what they were doing every take. I couldn't have her pop a balloon every single take. So I would use that time of her changing the battery to actually like walk through things with the actors. So it was actually beneficial because it wasn't as rushed. But at the same time, there was a lesson learned to always have charged batteries because that sucked. But it happened. My friend Brody was going to be playing a very rich man on set. But I had given him the special task of bringing the bike to set on his way. And he rides up in a suit on a bike. And I just like was awestruck. I was like, that's what I want you to do. This is who I want you to be. I want you to be this gimmicky guy on a bike. It actually like sent me back to the time of like the zoetrope that we were working on in class and how they had like the wheel. Like that's immediately what my brain went to. I was like, oh my gosh, the guy in a suit on a bicycle. I was like, perfect. And so I just kept him there and I said to him, I said, Brody, do you know any bike tricks? And he looks at me and he's like, yeah, I could try a couple. Now, mind you, like this was like an older, old-fashioned bike, so it had very thin tires, not like dirt bike tires at all. And we're doing our first like take, and it was just like a rough take. I was like, I was just walking people through, and I'm recording the camera, and all of a sudden, like he goes, and mind you, he has to go in front of the camera, and then he has to ride himself behind us to get back around. So he was gonna be in a constant movement. And so we're doing the first take and I call action and he goes and he's riding. And all of a sudden I see Brody try to like kind of pop a wheelie. And you see on the camera, the bike lift and then the bike fall. And originally I had written into the script that there would be a bike crash. Of course, my plan was that he was going to ride a couple laps around us and then there'd be a bike crash. And the bike crash was actually intentionally going to be happening off screen, and there were going to be branches thrown into screen to signal the bike crash because I didn't want an actual actor getting hurt. But it was just so unbelievably funny when he fell. The girl who had been acting and my other friends who were there helping her and keeping everything just kind of in line, they had known Brody, so everyone just was on the floor laughing because they had like such a personal connection to him, and watching him laugh and watching like the type of person he is fall over was just the funniest thing. Like I about fell to the ground. Like I couldn't handle it. But it ended up being so funny that I like had a serious talk. I pulled him over the side. I said, do you think you can actually fall on purpose, like in the film? He was like, yeah, I could probably do that. So each take he did a fall. And he probably fell 5 total times, including the accident one. And just asking an actor to fall over 5 times was just insane for me. And I was really like kind of at the end grateful for our mistake of happening of him accidentally falling. But at the same time grateful for like him being such a good sport for the film. So that was really exciting. But overall, it just was fun to get out of my comfort zone. So it was fun to make. It was a good creative process and I'm very proud of how it turned out.
So this was the second film that we were supposed to make this semester. The camera had to be moving the entire time. It could not be any still shot. And it was supposed to be one long continuous shot, so no cuts at all. I wanted to do this story of this athlete kind of training in her home, and then this like intimate part of her coming back from meets and stuff and like having that trophy, and also the struggle of her parents of like, this is also really expensive, how are we gonna pay for all of this? The hardest part was going through all of the blocking and figuring out the costume changes and really figuring out how we were gonna shuffle around 7 people in a tiny little apartment, making sure that there's only either 1 or 2 people on screen at a time. So I did a lot of like overheads. The glide cam that we wanted to use was actually our cohort Mike's, and he had come to the Carson Center the night before and kind of taught us how to set it all up and how to balance it and how to use it. So we were really excited, and Kaylee and I were both at the center that night, and after Mike had left, we started practicing, started doing a lot of things, and she was like, oh my God, this is really heavy. But then she was like, I'm gonna go home and kind of like work with it and see how I can, I'm gonna practice. I was really stressed the morning of. I was freaking out about like how we were gonna make everything work in such a short amount of time because we were shooting in like an hour and a half. Granted, it's like a 3-minute long one continuous shot, so like it kind of seems like, oh, it shouldn't take that long, but like it takes a few takes to like get everything going and everything, which it did. And then once I got there with Kaylee and Sarah, we kind of talked over the blocking of it all so that Kaylee kind of knew before the actors got there kind of what her path around the apartment was gonna be. Kaylee was really excited to use the glide cam, especially since Jessie, our professor, had said that it was gonna take her a long time to learn and that we probably shouldn't use it. As we were kind of going around before people got there, when I was explaining it to her and how she was gonna have to go not only like around the apartment, but up sometimes and then down sometimes, she was like, oh my God, like she would go for about like 30 seconds to a minute-ish, and then she would hold it and she'd like shake out her arms. And she's like, oh my God, this is really hard. And I was like, okay, if you think you can do it, then like, let's do it. But also, if you can't, then like, let's just switch. And I think before we actually took the first shot, like we were practicing with the actors and she just like couldn't hold it anymore. And at that point, I felt kind of bad because I knew that she really wanted to learn how to use it. And I know that she wanted to like prove Jessie wrong. But like I was the director and I was like, we're on a time constraint, and I could tell she was struggling. And so at that point I was getting stressed out about like, we actually can't. So I was like, okay, Kayla, like I'm really sorry, but like we're switching to the other one. And she was like, okay, that's fine. We'll learn how to use it later. And after that, we ended up using the smaller PVC rig. And then the actors got there and we were like, okay, so I'm just gonna kind of explain it to you guys first. So I kind of explained them. I was like, okay, so you start here at the couch and then you look towards the TV and the camera turns to the TV, and then when the camera's at the TV, then you go to the desk. So then I think we just were like, there's no more explaining that we really have to do. Like we really just need to like hit record and do it. And then it was just kind of funny how it all like ended up happening, because we were like, wait, if she's gonna turn this way, then that means I'm gonna have to be out of the shot over here and over there. And so it was just a matter of figuring out how people were gonna shuffle around the apartment. The costume changes were a very hard obstacle to get through too. I wanted her to have sweatpants on in some shots and shorts on in other shots. And at the beginning, I didn't want her to have any kind of leotard because she was just starting off. Fully dressed was, I think, 5 or 6 layers of clothes. She had memorized the costume changes beforehand, which was very helpful during production. But one thing that we had to do was people not in the shot were throwing clothes underneath desks or in the other room so that they weren't in the shot. We did a few, we had to cut like in the middle some of those times, and then at one point I was just like, we just have to go all the way through, like we can't stop, we need to figure out what this is gonna be like. So we went all the way through and it was really messy and awful shot, but at that point people knew what they were doing, knew what they needed to do at the right time. After we went through the entire thing once, I felt a lot better, and I think the confidence of the group kind of grew, and then also my confidence in myself kind of grew of directing and like figuring out how to tell people where they're supposed to be and fixing the problems that we have in the shots. After that, I was excited because I was like, we're getting into the rhythm of things, we kind of know. And then I became a bit more relaxed after that. We started taking a few deep breaths here and there, like before we started shooting. And so I felt really good about it, about the second half of that time where I was like, we're gonna get the shot, I know we are, and then we might actually have time to get it a few more times after that. When we showed our rough cut, the one thing that I was really nervous about was that people weren't going to understand the story, and they weren't going to understand that this story had taken place over a long period of time. So I was kind of nervous about that. And I know that our professors, Jessie and Anna, had said a lot to us about making sure that your lighting is okay and your focus is okay. So I was nervous that people were going to notice possibly the few small parts that it went out of focus, or the possible little like breathing of the camera trying to find the focus. But I think for the most part, the story was compelling enough that those things didn't matter as much. And so we got really good feedback from our classmates and from our professors. There was a few things that we could work on in post-production with what we already had, and those things we did try to fix. Once we came back to present our final cut about 5 days later, we had fixed those, and I think that our classmates understood the story. They were surprised by the ending, which is what I really wanted, and so I'm very pleased with how it turned out.
So this third project was experimental, and they really wanted us to just get outside of the box. It was supposed to be non-linear, narrative, non-musical sound, which was interesting, time manipulation, all these different things, so that it wasn't, classic filmmaking. Unfortunately, due to personal circumstances, we weren't able to film with our third member, and so we were just a 2-person team. This third film is titled Headspace, and the concept behind it is more of what's going on in someone's head, and it drew from the fact of kind of an internal struggle. So the main character in this film is kind of fighting the more chaotic parts of her brain and like all that stuff that's going on in her life, and trying to balance it out with the more calming aspects that she can hold on to. I mainly wanted the emotions to come across and less of what exactly is she going through, more of just that she has this internal struggle, because I really wanted the viewers to kind of put their own connection to it. Obviously I have my own story behind it, but I really wanted the people watching to just really feel the emotion and maybe make their own personal connection to a time in their life where they had this kind of struggle or they were going through some things, and so it didn't necessarily have to be one specific story. Pre-production, I will admit, was a little bit of a struggle because I really just had this concept in mind and I wasn't quite sure how to portray it. So I sat down with my DP, Kara, and we were just like, okay, we have this concept. And I had a few shots in mind that I really wanted to add, but we were like, how is this gonna look? Because a lot of our shots, if you see them by themselves, you're like, I don't see the connection. So the first day of shooting was pretty low-key because it was just Kara and I. It was my first time as director, so it was a good way to get started without having the pressure of directing an actor as well. We just went to our few locations, and luckily, since a lot of the locations we shot again on the second day, it was a good way to scout out a little bit more and plan a little bit more for the second day when we had the actress, so that things could run smoother the second day. We were going to shoot at this amphitheater at Pioneers Park, and normally when I'm there it's open, so it was closed. And honestly, it wasn't that much of a challenge because luckily Pioneers Park has a lot of cool things there that I already had a second location in mind. I don't know why I had the second location in mind. I was planning on the amphitheater being open, but I had a backup. However, we did film at noon outside. That was a little bit of a struggle. Unfortunately, we couldn't get an ND filter or anything to help with that, but luckily Kara was able to work her magic in post-production, so it worked out all right. So second day, we had our actress, which was amazing. And it worked out that I had actually worked with this actress before. I wasn't the director for that project. The first few scenes with her were probably the hardest for me, just because I was getting my stride and I was trying to explain what this non-narrative film was to her and try to get her into that space where she could really, feel comfortable portraying what was going on. But she did an amazing job. She's so nice. It was very comfortable once we shot the first few and we kind of like got into stride with each other. I will say my favorite to direct was the last scene we shot with her, which is outside the library when she's having more of her emotional moment. It was just an amazing experience for me because I was at that point where I was directing, but I was giving her space as well. And so I just remember, especially when we shot the close-ups of her, me and Kara were just very quiet, and I was just like, Mar, are you good? We're ready to roll. We're just gonna do another one. You're doing great. Just feel it and just keep going as long as you feel that you can. But on the inside, Kara and I were just like, yes, this is what we want. This is the shot. She's killing it with the emotions. We were so excited, but I just remember on the shoot, I was just like, I have to stay calm because she's in this space and I don't want to disrupt the work that she's doing right now. For me, it was just like an incredible moment because I've heard Hollywood directors, I'm nowhere close to that, but I've just heard moments like that where they have said they've needed to take a step back and let the actor work. And for me, that was just like a little step into the waters of directing that I was like, I could feel that she just needed her space. She was doing great. She didn't need any notes. I just needed to let her act it out and be in that space. So I thought that was a cool experience. So right after we wrapped, we downloaded the footage. And at this point, this was when we're like, oh, a lot of the outside footage is very overexposed. And so it was a few days of Kara and I like, do we reshoot? Do we not reshoot? We found that a few of the shots actually, once you messed around with the lighting in post, looked all right. And the other ones, I was like, I'm not sure if we even need these in the film. So it was just a strange time of which shots do we keep, which shots do we not keep. And we ended up not reshooting. And we ended up having over 100 clips. 55 that we loaded into Premiere. So editing was very bulky, especially because we decided to have lots of quick cuts. And then after just getting the lighting and the shots in the order that we wanted, we had the challenge of the music. And that was an experience in itself. I have no background in music. I've played some piano, but it was hard. Kara and I were just in the lab again, and we had some problems with Logic Pro that for some reason it kept putting our white noise above all of the other clips, so you couldn't hear anything else. And that was, at that point we probably lost our minds just a little bit. Showing the final film was probably one of the hardest. I think the rough cut was the hardest just because it was the first time people saw it, but then the final cut was really nerve-wracking. But overall, I was very proud of the film Kara and I put through, and I thought people received it really well.
For a long time, actually, like while I was reading my script, I didn't like it. Like I was like, yeah, it's good. Like it will make sense. The project will look good. But it wasn't until I was actually on set with the process filming it that I actually got to see how funny it was.
I really liked directing, and so I'm really happy with how production went.
I'm just proud of how it turned out with the time and constraints that we had.
To actually like direct people, hey, fall over, push yourself off this bike, have her reject you by throwing flowers at you, it was different for me, and that was a lot of fun.
I learned a lot about myself through this process.
Our professors really gave us the room and space to just go out and make films. And for a lot of us, or at least for some of us, it was our first time leading our own shoots. And for me, at least, it was my first time leading my own shoot and planning everything out. So it was an interesting experience of just being able to figure everything out and also work with the people in my group and figuring it out together.
It was great. Once it started flowing. We were going, and it was unbelievable. I was just overwhelmed with how exciting it was.
I'm very pleased with how it turned out, and it was a great opportunity to work with my team.
My main takeaway is definitely going to be, how to figure stuff out and how to like adapt, because on all of our shoots we had something that did not go as planned and we had to work around it.
You have to kind of be adaptable.
At the end of the day, I was really happy with how it was received.
It was nice to see all my hard work in the end pay off, and then to see my team's like just overall reaction of like, it's done, it worked together, and we have a film.
When things go wrong, sometimes you have to look at it in a different light and work together to find a way to make it work.